In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. There were so many different topics that were talked about during the election. One of the hot topics was the issue of entitlement programs. And there are a number of different entitlement programs that the government offers. Just to name some of them, there's the home mortgage interest deduction. There is the lifetime learning tax credit, student loans, child and dependent care tax credit, earned income tax credit, Social Security, Pell Grants, unemployment insurance, veterans benefits, the GI Bill, Medicare, Head Start, Social Security disability, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, public assistance, government subsidized housings, and food stamps. These are just some of them. There's a few more. But this idea of entitlements is an idea that's pervasive in our society. And people often think, well, yeah, I am entitled, for instance, to Social Security. You know, I've spent my life paying into Social Security, and I'm entitled to receive something when that's done. I've made an investment. I should receive something for my investment. Other people say, you know, I own a home, so I'm entitled to a mortgage interest deduction. Okay, that's something that the government has promised me. It's something I'm entitled to, and I intend to take. Other people say, you know what, I've been disabled. I need help, and the government has a responsibility to help me. I'm entitled to that. As Americans, the belief that we have a right to something is ingrained in our society. It's become part of our society, kind of a mainstream understanding of our relationship with the government. Of course, non-entitlements are the same. People pay into Social Security, they consider that a kind of investment. People who receive Medicare may not pay into, Medicaid may not pay into it, but still feel as Americans they're entitled to it. And some people think that, you know what, I'm entitled to my entitlement. But that person over there, that person is not entitled to his entitlement or her entitlement. Because mine's a just one, their one's not a just one. If we look differently as entitlements, and this is the main point I want to make to you today, if we look at entitlements differently, we can have a richer life. As Christians, we need to develop a biblical view of entitlements, not an American view of entitlements, but a biblical understanding of what we are entitled to as Christians. And heading up this understanding is an understanding of who we are before the holiness of God. Jesus referred to people as evil. In Matthew chapter 7, he said, "If you then who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask?" We're all sinners. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, the Bible tells us. St. Paul teaches us. And we're taught that the wages of sin is death. So we all sin. We all carry sin and evil within us. Imagine if you went to a great restaurant and they served you a wonderful dinner, and on the top of the dinner was a little mouse dropping. Would you look at that and say, "Oh, that's a wonderful dinner. I'm looking forward to eating that"? Would you say, "No, this thing is no good at all"? Send it back? I think we'd all send it back. Even if we have that much sin in us, we're polluted. We're polluted. And in that sense, Jesus teaches us that we're evil. We have this in us. We carry this with us. And this is the teaching of the New Testament. So our self-concept as Christians, as the Bible teaches us, is that we are sinners. And we're deserving of death. That's what we deserve for our sin. So our self-concept is this. We're entitled to death. We're entitled to hell. We're entitled to suffering. Christianity, however, is a story of God's mercy and God's forgiveness. It's a story that tells us that even though that's what we're entitled to, God isn't going to give us what we're entitled to. He's going to give us something different. So we don't get what we deserve. And as Christians, we need to understand this and be thankful for it, that none of us get what we deserve. Because if we got what we deserved, we'd all have only suffering and hell to look forward to. But Jesus came to take that suffering and pain upon himself in our place. Now we live by the grace of God. We might think this kind of mindset is extreme, the idea that we're not entitled to anything but suffering and death. But this kind of understanding of entitlement is essential to our understanding of who we are as Christians and our relationship with God, which means if we get anything more than suffering and death, anything nice, then it comes by the grace of God. It's something we're undeserving of. This was a mindset that was prevalent at the time of the first Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims. Remember, half of their number died on the voyage over to America. And in the winter, food was so scarce, it actually came a point where they were limited to 5 grains of corn per day. 5 grains per day, can you imagine? They were suffering. And yet, in the midst of this, they realized the need to give thanks. They gave thanks in times of desperation, because they realized that the little they received was a grace that they were receiving from God. Despite their sufferings, they were thankful. So the celebration of Thanksgiving at its inception, at its core, is about being thankful during difficult times. It's good for us to designate times to be thankful. It's not just good for us to be thankful for God's sake, it's good for us to be thankful for our sake. When we're thankful, it's good for us. And when we're really thankful, it's really good for us. And when we're really, really, really thankful, it's really, really, really good for us. It's really, really, really good for our souls to be really, really thankful. In fact, saints are thankful people. There is no saint that is not a thankful person. And when you see someone that has a great sense of thankfulness about their life, a joy that they live with, someone that's thanking you all the time, someone that's thankful to God all the time, you're seeing someone who's living the kind of life God calls us to live. A life where we are constantly aware of His good provision, of how we're receiving things we don't deserve, and we are just rejoicing in His grace. Grace is when someone receives something they don't deserve. In point of fact, according to our teachings, we receive things we don't deserve every day. So every day is full of grace. During Lincoln's time, and Dita and I and Peter, we went and saw the Lincoln movie yesterday, and I can't encourage you enough to see it. It's absolutely a wonderfully made movie. But, he was present during difficult times. There was bloodshed, there was loss. If you've ever been down to the Lincoln Museum, and I encourage you to make that trip south in Illinois, you can see the ebb and flow of the war up on the wall. They show how the North would take territory and the South would take territory. And you can actually watch on this giant map how the war ebbed and flowed. And on the right side, they have a running list of the casualties of the war. And the number grows and grows and grows into the 100,000s and higher. It's a very powerful thing to see. A time of tremendous loss where every family either lost someone immediately in their family or someone that was a cousin or what have you. And during this time, there was a recognition that there was a need to give thanks to God. Now, the states many of the states already had their own Thanksgiving celebrations, but there wasn't a federal Thanksgiving celebration. And in awareness of the situation that the country was going through, Lincoln thought it would be good to establish a federal day of Thanksgiving. So he encouraged the country to pause and give thanks, and he did this by means of a proclamation. And the full proclamation is actually in your Sunday bulletins. But if you read it carefully, you'll see that after acknowledging the great hardship of civil war, acknowledging that it was happening because of the sinfulness of the people, not that God was inflicting it upon them, but it was because of their own sinfulness that they were going through this. He then acknowledges that despite this, God is continually providing plentifully for the nation. He's providing food and coal. He's providing increase in citizenship. He is keeping us in peace from foreign wars and entanglements. And in awareness of this, he sees the presence of God's ongoing mercy and provision. And so he directs the nation to have this annual day of Thanksgiving. And part of what he writes is the following. No human counsel has devised, nor has any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, has nevertheless remembered mercy. It seemed to me fit and proper that the gifts of God should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged as with one heart and one voice by the whole American people. I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also for those who are at sea and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe the last Thursday of November next as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwells in the heavens. As meaningful and powerful are Abe Lincoln's words of thanksgiving. It's interesting to note within that what he's really thanking God for is provision. That despite all the suffering and difficulties they're going through, God is still providing. And he lists the things that God's providing. And broadly, this is why we thank God, because we understand of what he is providing for us. When we think of what he is providing for us, we often think just of physical things. We think of our houses and food and cars and clothing and things like that. But as we grow and mature in our spirituality, we're called to recognize that the greatest things he provides for us are things like a sense of love and mercy and forgiveness and compassion, peace. Those spiritual gifts that we desire, these are the highest gifts for us to desire. And when we have them, it's a sign that God's grace is in our lives, that he's filling us with his Spirit. According to St. Paul, our thanksgiving, therefore, need not be dependent upon our circumstances. He says, give thanks in all circumstances. And he himself gave thanks even under incredibly oppressive conditions, when he wrote, even while he was imprisoned, words like, rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say, rejoice, have no anxiety about anything, but in everything by prayer and by supplication, make your requests be known to God. He wrote these words in prison, to be constantly thankful, to be constantly rejoicing. In shackles, beaten, recovering from being whipped, he wrote, rejoice in the Lord always. Because it was simply his relationship with God that gave him a sense of joy, a sense of thanksgiving. And it need be no more than that. This could be a challenge for us, to find our peace with God, especially when life is difficult, when storms of one or another kind rage around us. When I was in undergraduate school, I was roommates with a guy for a year and a half in the dorms, and then we had some friends who had a house, and they wanted other people to come into their house, so we had a room in that house, along with 5 other guys. So there were a lot of us living in the house. Rent was $60 a month. It was very nice. And so there was always someone in the house, or virtually always someone in the house. But in this one particular week, everyone was gone except me. I had the house to myself. And on that week, I had the flu. I had it bad. I had the very high fever. And you know how nice it is to have someone around when you're sick? I mean, you're feeling miserable, but you can always call out and they'll bring you a cup of tea or something, you know? Well, I was feeling so miserable. It got to the point where, and I'm sure you've experienced this, most of you have anyway, where you feel so sick and so heavy you can't even move. I mean, it becomes a little bit frightening where you can't even sit up and you're burning up. That's what I was going through. High fever, and I couldn't even sit up. And I remember thinking, I can't even call out. My throat was so sore, it was so swollen, I couldn't even call out for help. And here I am alone in the house. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm going to survive this. I don't know. And feeling, in addition to the sickness and the pain, tremendous anxiety. This could be it. This is it. I should ask someone to stay or something. And then in the midst of that, remembering what I learned in church. And calling upon the name of God. And just praying over and over, Lord, thy will be done. If this is my time, thy will be done. And I felt this tremendous unburden, this tremendous lightening. And within a minute or two, I was able to sit up. But I didn't remember that at first. It took that pain, that suffering, to draw me to the place to really call upon the name of the Lord with my full heart. I was calling on him before, but not in that way. Not from the depths of my heart. Not, Lord, I give my soul to you. It's up to you. Because in the end, our very breath is a gift from God. Each and every breath we take, each and every time our heart beats, it's a gift from God. And the greatest gift from God is just that we live in communion with him. Till our last breath in this life and our first breath in the kingdom of heaven, where we will glorify him forever, together with the Father and Holy Spirit, unto the ages of ages.